Cool. I think we're good to go, Barry.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jake. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm going to do a quick introduction of myself. Thanks to CVP for putting this together in the circumstances that we're working in. I'm going to quickly jump out of this screen now and bring up my face on a webcam just for a few minutes. So excuse me as I bounce around. Hello, everybody. My name is Barry Griffin from Canon UK, and I'm going to be walking you through this presentation today of the C500 Mark II. Not the usual way that we would do something like this, especially for myself. We usually like to get hands-on, get people in front of the camera, get to touch and play with it, get to see what the functions can do, usually around some of CVP showrooms around the UK. But with everything that's going on at the moment, this is one way of being able to interact and answer some of the questions that some of you guys may have. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up the presentation slide. It isn't a PowerPoint, and apologies for that. Just the way we're working at the moment. I do have some video content and some other things on there as well that we can have a look at. What I believe is Jake is going to filter through some questions during the presentation if we're on a particular area that we're talking about. So if anybody does have any questions, please put them in there and I will try answer them on the fly. If not, we can do a Q&A session at the end. So let's crack on. I'm using a single monitor here. So here we go, everybody. So we're going to be talking about the Canon Cinema EOS C500 Mark II. This camera was announced at IBC last year and started to ship through to people the start of this year in January. So there's lots of units now out in the marketplace with a lot of, we hope, and I've seen myself, end users who are shooting with it already, using it for content, which is really, really exciting. So we'll go through and talk about this camera a little bit. So just in the history of it, a lot of people wonder where Canon came from with the Cinema EOS range. The one thing that a lot of people talk about was the Canon EOS 5D Mark II. That kind of changed everything back in 2008. And in 2011, Canon actually brought out the C300, which was a new venture, a new area for us going into the cinema style cameras because of what the EOS 5D Mark actually did. And going through the years here to where we are now, so when you think about it, we're not even a decade doing what we're doing, and where we've come from and to now is just phenomenal. So in 2012, we brought out the C500, which of course was our first RAW camera, the C100, which was our entry-level Cinema EOS camera. Then the C100 Mark II came out with some upgrades and updates onto the marketplace, which is still heavily used in the marketplace right now. And then, of course, we brought out the first 4K internal recording camera, the C300 Mark II. In 2016, we went and introduced our large A camera style C700 in PL and global shutter options. And then in 2017, we brought out the very, very popular, one of my favorite cameras, the C200, which again is very well used out in the industry, in the marketplace at the moment. And then in 2018, we just updated the C700 because of the interest of full frame, where that was going. So that was our C700 full frame. And here we are now, 2019, when we brought out the C500 Mark II. So you can see over the last decade, I'll put it in that way, in the last decade, where we've come from and where we are now with our Cinema EOS range. So going into the product itself, just as an overview, the concept of the product was evolving the standard that we've already set and then looking at the expandability of the camera. So if you see here, first of all, the one thing we did want to do is to get a small, lightweight, compact design, make it modular, improve the usability. So we bring, with this camera, we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but interchangeable user mounts. The expandability with extension packs to make this camera a different unit depending on the workflow and the systems you're working for. And of course, to bring in full frame at a 5.9K CMOS sensor with a new DIGIC DV7 processor. So that's all about the imaging and the codecs and how everything works inside the camera. So that was the concept. Where Canon see this camera working, if you look through our range here, we have our little pyramids in the ENG, so electronic news gathering, or electronic field production area, as well as cinema, we see this camera sitting just below the C700 series with sports and variety shows, news reporting, documentaries, TV commercials, TV dramas, and film production, especially in the indie side, and especially with the price point that the camera hits there as well. So you can see with our other cameras from the C100 Mark II going up to the C700 that we tried to cover off a variety of different scenarios and production levels for our cinema EOS range. So what does this camera actually offer? So the key shouts, the key specs that a lot of people got really excited about. So yes, this is a full frame 5.9K CMOS sensor camera. It has a brand new DIGIC DV7 engine, so that drives the whole unit. It was small, lightweight, and compact in design. And not only will it be able to do 5.9K in a raw codec, Cinema Raw Lite, but also be able to oversample for 4K deliverables as well. So the raw codec is in there, the modular design for extending it out, which we'll talk about a little later on. The big thing, which I know a lot of people have got really excited about and really pleased to see, is the user interchangeable mounts. So with this, again, we'll go into detail what we can do there. It has and is the first Canon Cinema EOS camera that offers electronic image stabilization in camera. So having an image stabilization system in a cinema camera, which is phenomenal. And then, of course, bringing out the 12G SDI support, so single cable output, 4K output system as well. So they're the main features. So going on to breaking it in, what I'm going to show you first of all, this is just a very, very short film, a DOP that we've worked with on a few occasions called Brett Danton, was one of the very first people to be able to shoot the C500 Mark II on a Jaguar Land Rover, a Jaguar advert. Some of you may have already seen this online. I'm just going to quickly play the BTS now. Just with this at the moment, you will get to see the video, but with the way we're working the system at the moment, you may not hear the music, so the audio won't be there. There's no narrative over the audio, it's just music, but it'll give you an idea of how it plays. So here we go.
All good, Barry? I think you're still muted, mate. I think you're still muted, Barry.
Muted.
There you go.
Oh, I'm up. There we go. I was wondering what happened there. Sorry, I wasn't. Apologies, everybody.
All good.
I'm sure we have these little glitches now and again. Let me go back there. I don't know if you've missed everything I just said. I went through a little story there. I might have to go back.
Basically everything from that first slide, mate.
You're joking.
As in just the 5.9K. That bit there.
Oh, this one here. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry about that. Well, okay, no problem. I'd expect we get little glitches here or there. We're okay now. So we're back up and running, guys. From the video, like hopefully you heard what I said there about the functionality and how they used it and passed it through the window, which was a dangerous thing to do, seeing it's the only camera of its type at that time they shot with it. But with the camera here, it is a full frame 5.9K CMOS sensor. And this is just showing you the actual aspect ratios that we can shoot in the camera. So as you'd expect when we're shooting in RAW, it's 5.9K at DCI, so using the full width of the sensor. But what we can do with this, of course, we can oversample as well from that 5.9K in full frame. We'll go into that a little bit more as we go down. But when we go into Super 35, which is the yellow frame you see there, we can go down to a 4K DCI or 4K UHD. And then, of course, we can go down to a 2K DCI and 2K, or full HD, should I say. So with this, there's nothing extra that you have to download or purchase or get anything like that. This comes straight out of the box that you can select the camera from its full frame right down to being a Super 16 camera within the menu, very easy to do. So it doesn't matter if you're using full frame lenses, Super 35mm lenses, Super 16 lenses, you can get there with this camera, which is really, really nice as well. So going into it, like while the sensor is very important and is, if not the most important, the sensor doesn't do anything if it doesn't have the right processor behind it. And Canon have a good history of the DIGIC system processors being able to drive through what we can actually do. One thing a lot of people talk about and say about the Canon system is they're really good because they do what they do and they do it well and they can do it continuously. So with this one, what we get from the high quality HDR side of things, we're now getting, because it's full frame, a 15 plus stops dynamic range. So we're edging over 15 stops of dynamic range with this camera. We're able to shoot in the log files, log 2 and log 3. So that's 15 stops of dynamic range, and log 3, which gives you 14 stops of dynamic range. We'll again go into detail about HDR, about PQ and HLG. So if you've not heard of those terminologies before, this camera does them. We'll talk about that when we get there. Of course, we've already said it does 5.9K, 4K DCI, up to 60 or 50p. It does cinema raw light there as well, and it does oversample from that 5.9K to give us a 4K deliverable in a smaller package. Of course, we have the electronic IS, which is the first for the Cinema EOS range. We've got Canon's renowned dual pixel CMOS AF, so the AF system within the camera. We've got focus enabled on the touch panel as well, so we can touch the screen to focus where we want to focus. And of course, we have the cinema raw light, XF-AVC, and proxy recording that we can go through. Again, I'll go into detail of those. Of course, we have various look settings with different gamuts, and we can go up to 120 frames per second in the 2K mode. So going into the camera itself, of course, ergonomically, size and weight is very important, and that was one of the things that we wanted to work on in this camera, was getting the size down, getting the weight appropriate, so you can use this full frame internal raw camera even down to working on a gimbal or on a drone. So as you can see here, we have in the red, you're going to see the C300 the C500 original camera size, and you can see in front of it the C500 Mark II. So it's a smaller size, and we have got the weight down as well from just 4 pounds down to 3.8 pounds, or 18-20 grams to 17-30 grams. So a lot of people, when they pick up the camera, especially users who may be using larger camera systems, as soon as they pick up this camera, they can't believe how light it is. So that is a big game changer, especially for shooting all day handheld. This system allows you to be able to do that without hurting yourself or straining yourself or doing anything like that. So of course, we talked about the oversampling here. So if people are wondering how it's actually done, this is just a quick little slide to give you an understanding of it. So of course, it's a 5.9K Bayer system that is processed using the processor, and it works through everything. Some people ask, how does Canon's oversampling works? And a couple of my colleagues in Canon Europe and around the world, they use the terminology of saying Canon uses a magic sauce to be able to oversample because of the quality of the oversampling that we deliver from our system and our sensors with the processor. So of course, with this, we can get 4K UHD, 2K and HD all the way down from the 5.9K, depending on the size of the workflow you're working in. So there's no limitations when it comes to that, and it still looks great. So the support of two file formats. This camera was the first camera that came out in the marketplace that was using the new CFEXPRESS cards. Now there are some more cameras, especially from Canon, that have come out that are using the same card. But these cards allow this camera to do what it does. So with Cinema Raw Light at the Cinema Raw Light up to 12-bit, you can do this internally on a CFEXPRESS card. The oversampling as well from that in XF-AVC, you can see there we get a 4K 422 10-bit oversample that also goes onto the CFEXPRESS cards. So you've got two slots there for doing that. And when we go down to the proxy, you also got an SD card in there, and that will deliver you a 2K 4208-bit in an XF-AVC. So for quick turnaround or needing to get something quickly out to a client or to a grader who's checking something, this camera allows you to have all the proper codecs, the high-end codecs, depending how you're working, as well as the proxy as well. So modular design. What we're looking at here now, hopefully you might be able to see my mouse. I'm going to bring my mouse in here a little bit. These are the Canon accessories, some that come directly with the camera when you purchase it. So the camera is ready to go when you buy it, which is a fantastic thing. And I'll explain what you get in the box so you know what you're getting. And then there's the optional extras. Now, while Canon have their optional extras from LED viewfinders to expansion packs and shoulder support units and so on and so forth. Of course, some people also want to use third-party accessories, and of course there are some third-party accessories out there as well that you can add to this. But to give you an idea, up in the left-hand corner here, this is what you get in the box. You get the camera, it comes standard with an EF mount, you get the handle, you get the LCD attachment with the larger LCD, which I'll be going into. You get the mic holder, the camera grip, and the thumb rest. You also get the battery, and at the moment you're getting a 512 CFEXPRESS card in the box. So that means you have everything out of the box to get you going. All you need is a lens. And of course, most people who are probably purchasing or renting or using this camera will have lenses that they'll be able to use straight away with this. So it's a straight out of the box solution, which is fantastic. But we'll go into more detail about the expansion packs and the user changeable mounts and so on and so forth a little later on. But just wanted to give you a little overview of the flexibility of the camera. So the system to match end users. So this is about the extension units. So as you can see here in the back of the camera, it's not even got an an EVF unit, should I say. It hasn't even got anything like you would have seen on a C300, C300 Mark II, or C200. And that was from feedback from the industry. People saying they wanted to keep this a unit small and modular, sometimes wanted to be able to take off the EVF. So what we've done with this is we've now taken that off it's an optional extra. So you can get the EVF-V50, which you see here, that can be mounted on. It just screws onto the back and attaches via the connection points that you see here. You can get extension unit 1. While we'll go into what's on the camera itself, what you're getting extra over and above what you're getting on the camera, you get a Genlock sync out, a remote B, and an Ethernet connection in extension unit 1. And an extension unit 2, which is the bigger unit, you're actually getting a lot more. So it turns the camera into a full production camera. So you are getting the V-mount battery mount onto the back. You're getting the Genlock sync out, the remote, and the Ethernet that you've seen on extension unit 1, but you're also getting lens control, DTAP, and on the opposite side here, you can't see it in this picture, but we will talk about it. You're getting 2 more because there are 2 XLR inputs on the actual camera body, but you're getting 2 more XLR inputs, so 3 and 4 on here with control as well. And this is great here. So while the camera comes standard with an EF mount, you can get yourself, if required, an EF lock mount, or the FC, the EF cinema lock mount. So if you're using Canon cinema zoom lenses, which are large, this is kind of a hybrid, if you want to say, of an EF and a PL mount, or you can get a PL mount if you're using PL mounts. All you have to do is using 4 screws. Again, we'll go into a little bit more detail. 4 screws, has some shims in there as well, and the adapters actually come with their own shims as well, that you can do it. I've done it in 1.5 minutes from taking off the mount to putting on a new mount in that space of time. So really, really good that you have that flexibility with this camera now. So as I've said at the start, it's the first cinema EOS camera with electronic image stabilization. So this is not IBIS, just if anybody's asking that question, it's not a sensor shift. This is using part of the sensor, so it will crop into the sensor a tiny bit and move around that part of the sensor to assist you in getting stabilization while using non-IS lenses. Now this, when we talk about something like this is not that I can put it onto a back of a plane or something like that and it's shaking around and it's going to balance it out. This is for handheld work, simple handheld work, where if you don't have access to a gimbal or the space you're working in doesn't allow for it, you can use this when you're recording an XF-AVC to be able to balance a shot off. Now the way it works is quite clever. If you can see on the right hand side here, so we talk about automatically obtains the focal length. If you're using an EF lens, so a Canon EF lens, it'll recognize the lens straight away and say, if you're putting the stabilization on, I know what lens you're using, so I know how to work this and balance this off. If we're using a non-EF lens or a non-communication lens, you are able to put in the focal length. So the example here, type in 50 mil. You can move between 1 to 1,000 mil in here and set that. That lets the camera know what's the focal length of that lens, so it knows how to actually adjust for that as well. So doesn't matter what kind of lens, an EF lens, it'll recognize it, but if you're using a non-communication lens, you just tell it which lens you're using, the focal length, and it will adjust it for you. So great and simple for simple handheld work where gimbals can't be used, where you're trying to reduce shake for that scenario in the scene that you might be in. So it's a very, very useful tool. Of course, 4K 60p can be delivered via a single cable. So of course, in our older cameras, we always had to get the 4 cables out because it was a 3G SDI. This now has 12G SDI out. So we can go either via the HDMI cable or 12G SDI out to a compatible display. So a reference display for a post-production if you wanted to connect it up to it. This works with it straight out of the box. Nice and simple. So we don't have to go through that too much, but it just keeps the format small. You don't have a lot of cables coming out of the camera. Keeps things simple. Of course, image quality. When we talk about this gives you an idea of the image circle of the 500, especially using one of our Sumire lenses. So Canon Sumire lenses are full frame lenses. And of course, because we're going into the full frame world and we're using very fast cinematic lenses, you will be able to get softer bokeh effects and be really creative because you're seeing the edge of the glass with the sensor. So you can actually see the way the bokeh shifts. A lot of people are loving the creativity that you can now generate from using full frame with full frame lenses when we go out there. Of course, if you're talking about wanting bokeh and shallow depth of field, but you're in a very highly exposed area and you need to bring in ND filters, like all our cameras, Canon does offer up to a 10-stop ND filter on this camera. So out of the box, you'll get 2, 4, and 6. And then if you want to expand that, you can extend it out and it will bring in a 6 and a 2 to make 8 and a 6 and a 4 to make 10 stops. So that can be brought in depending on the scenario that you're wanting to work with. The good thing about this is the ND filters are actually Canon made, so you're not going to get color shift or anything throwing out. Sometimes if you're using third-party filters, you can throw the color away a little bit. Some people like that depending on the look you're looking for, but this will keep that color that a lot of people enjoy from Canon even when you're using the ND. This has been taken from our digital still camera technology, so diffraction correction. So this is the first cinema EOS camera to actually offer this as well. So when we're shooting an XF-AVC, we can get peripheral illumination correction, chromatic aberration correction, and video diffraction correction. In Cinema Raw Light, it gives you peripheral. The main reason there is because it's raw, it doesn't need to actually work it out. You can work that in post, but an XF-AVC, because it's a smaller form codec, this will allow you to get a better image from that. So it just sharpens it off, cleans the edges off on images that you've seen in like Canon EOS 1Ds, 5Ds series cameras previously. So this is available in XF-AVC. Now, one thing that, like anything, but Canon's been doing this for the last 10 years with Cinema EOS, and of course, there's learnings all the way down to the ergonomics, but there's also down to the color reproduction. So when we talk about our sensors, so you had previously maybe seen in certain models, I know it happened in the C300 Mark II, that blue lights would become more purple or reds would be more of a magenta tone. So what Canon have done, they've gone back and seen this. So the example here, the 500, if it's blue LEDs, they will be blue LEDs. If they're red subjects, they will be red. So the color enhancement or the color reproduction is now more realistic than being thrown out from before. So again, this is learnings as they go through from each range of sensors as we've developed them over the last decade. And of course, high sensitivity, low noise. Big thing now. The great thing about it is Canon has been known for many of its previous models to be a good low light camera, and it's one thing that we're still pushing and still getting better at. So of course, with the full frame sensor now and with the new processor, because it takes both to do this, it's not just the sensor, it's the processor as well, we can actually get cleaner images in low light performance. So yes, the camera supports up to 100 and 2400. I'm not going to say you're going to use that at any time. I've only ever used it once on a C200 where I was shooting a fox going through a forest with just moonlight, and I was able to bring it up. But it's a noisy image. It was more practical, but for the artistic side, you'd never go to that level. And being able to do this on a larger sensor camera, this pushes up the stop. So you can go to the next step up when you're going in higher ISOs to get good clean images from the C500 Mark II. Of course, it supports HDR. So in the industry now, there's been two standards of HDR that have been brought out into the industry. I keep on saying marketplace, but industry, and that's HLG and PQ. HLG stands for hyperlog gamma. That was actually kind of worked on and designed between BBC and NHK. This is a quick turnaround HDR deliverable. So you don't have to shoot and log and go back to post. This is for quick turnaround work. So HLG is the standard that they expect for broadcast. And PQ, which is perceptual quantization, I always hate saying that, but perceptual quantization, that was designed by Dolby. And that's being put down as a standard HDR deliverable for documentary or film. So if you need something that's turned around quickly, this is what we can actually use. So it works in XF-AVC in your 4210-bit, and you don't have to worry about going back to post. It is literally capture and deliver. So you can see the benefits for broadcast where that would be really useful. And this camera comes with its standard out of the box. So you can just select that if you need to do a quick turnaround job, which is fantastic. Of course, the camera does support log 2 and log 3, so C log 2 and C log 3. Love a curve, as they say. If you like your curves, this is a nice curve diagram to give you an idea what that does. And it just gives you an overview of what log offers. So with log 2, it prioritizes the tonality in the dark areas, as you can see there. Log 3 was an advanced version of the original log. So log 2 does push out and give us up to the 15 stops of dynamic range. And log 3, which we find is the most popular used for a majority of users because the workflow and post isn't as difficult, you don't have to do as much. It pushes into the, keeps the highlights, but it doesn't push into the dark areas as much. So if you're not worried about that too much, or you don't require to go into the darks too much, this is a good log to work in. But if you're requiring to do a lot of post-production, log 2 is where you would sit, so you can work in all aspects and all areas of the image. Of course, still talking about quick turnaround work, we've talked about HLG, we talked about PQ, which are industry standards for HDR. If you just need to deliver something online content or something simple, Canon have had this BT709 wide DR gamma, 800% in majority of our cameras for a few years now. So this is really good where it just gives you around 11 stops. As you know, 709 is around 9 stops. With the wide DR, it pushes this to around an 11 stop area, so you can get more information or more gradient through the image when shooting. Again, for quick turnaround work, if it's for corporate work or for online content, this has been very, very popular for many years, and we still keep that in there. So you can see from all these areas, from the log files to the HLG and PQ and the YDR, we're covering the aspect from high-end production with post-production down to some quick capture and turnaround work as well. So we're thinking about all aspects of work that might be happening. Of course, Cinema Raw Light. This was brought out in the C200 a few years ago now. So this camera does 5.9K Cinema Raw Light. So with this, we can record internally. We don't have to worry about carrying or putting cables on, attaching external SSDs to capture full RAW. This will allow us to capture up to 12-bit. The way it works is, the 5.9K, a 12-bit is up to 30p, and the 10-bit is up to 60p. So depending on the frame rate you're working at, depends on the bit rate you'll get. This slide here just gives you an overview of how that works. So the data size can be reduced from standard Cinema Raw. So we're going from Canon Cinema Raw that you'll find in a C700 unit. This will bring it down to 1/5 of the size. So very, very compressed codec, simple to use, that can be captured internally on the CFEXPRESS cards. And the thing is as well, you can dual slot record as well if you need to with this. And in post-production, again, it's turning into a popular codec. If you go online, I love going on and seeing people working with it, and the speed of turnaround from working in the raw workflow and then transcoding it over to something else that they might require is simple to do. So when you have some people talking about like a ProRes or 444 or 422 and a 10-bit or a 12-bit, with the raw file there, like photographers now, we have the original file, and then we can deliver the package depending what the customer requires. If it's high end in 444 or if it's right down to 420, but we still have the original raw file, which is really good. And the way we're talking about storage going forward as well, storage is getting more and more affordable. It's getting bigger. It's the kind of thing that's really changing now. So working in the Cinema Raw Light, that allows us to have the flexibility of post-production, but then being able to store the master file and then deliver whatever we require from that is going to be very popular. So if anybody likes a good old slide like this, I'm not going to go through every bit, but this is just showing you the resolution, the bit depth and the bit rate and the frame rate that Cinema Raw Light works in. So you can see there, Cinema Raw Light in 5.9K is 2.1 gigabits. If you're doing it in 4K, it's 1 gigabit. And if you're doing it in 2K, it's 250 megabits. And of course, in Cinema Raw Light in full frame or Super 35, you can get up to 60 frames per second. And then in the Super 16, the 2K format, you can get up to 120 frames per second. So what I'm going to show you here, I'm going to jump out of the slide in a second because we've had a couple of slides now at the moment. We work with a gentleman called Ollie Kensington, which a lot of you guys might know. He has Koru Films and a company called Koru that he does a lot of things with. CVP work with him a good bit because he's a really good grader out in the industry, and he's really good at being able to teach people how to get the best and how to do the best grading that they possibly can in the systems they work in. So what we have here is Ollie actually had a C500 Mark II and went out and did some sample shooting. I have the technical details here of this shot. This is the one that was shot on Cinema Raw Light. So just as an overview, the codec was CRM. It was 25 frames per second. Resolution, as you can see, is 5.9K. The bit depth is 12-bit. Then the chroma sampling, 444, white balance. He's put everything in here. So I'm just going to jump out for a second and go here and go here. And I'm going to play this video, put it in full screen, which is the graded version of what he's done. Now, the great thing about it is I will put this link out. Ollie's been really good that he's got a download link of the original file that you can download at CRM. So if anybody wants to try out and see how Cinema Raw Light grades for them, you can do that here. So I'll play the video, and then at the end, I'll put some links up with this information. Now, hopefully you can still hear me. I did mute myself there for a second. Can you hear me okay? Just confirm, Jake.
Yeah, all good, mate.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. So as I said, I will put the link up for that Vimeo page that Ollie has put out. And if anybody's interested, they can download the file, have a look at it, and look at how they can grade on the NLE programs that they work with. We'll go on to CinemaRaw and what it works with near the end. But to give you an idea, most major and most popular NLE programs on the marketplace can work with CinemaRaw, which is fantastic. So next. Going into it, of course, we talked about this as an XF-AVC camera as well. So this will give us the full 5.9K image, but bring it down to a 4K 4:210-bit up to 6050p. So this is all oversampled. So if somebody, especially in the documentary world, who doesn't want to actually shoot in RAW, doesn't require RAW for post-production, again, depending on how they're working and the way they're shooting and working in post, can shoot an XF-AVC. With XF-AVC, if anybody knows how it works, it does give you a really good way of working. It's an all-I format, so that means the compression is done in units of single frames. So it's not kind of cutting or missing frames that you'll find in like Longop or some other places. This gives you all the information there still. So it's a simple way of doing it. You can get more shooting out of the cards. You can have a simpler or smaller workflow afterwards in a 10-bit workflow area. Again, I have a slide here, XF-AVC recording. Nice and handy here. It just gives you an idea of the format, the resolutions, the bit rates, the frame rates as well that it works in. So you can see here straight away in 4K, we're shooting at 810 or 410 in DCI and UHD, and then in 2K, 310 and 160, and even going down to full HD at 310 and 160. And then in the 2K, in the 4208 bit for your proxy, it's 35 and 24. So nice and simple, just to give you an idea of how what you can shoot in XF-AVC recording. And again, what I've got here, again from Ollie at Coral, with the technical details. This is a video that he shot over Christmas at Bath Market, and this is great because it's low light footage. So this was shot in XF-AVC. You can see here the frame rates, the resolution, the bit depth, the chroma sampling that was worked in. So again, I'm just going to jump out of this page, go back to Vimeo right here, and we have this to play now. So bring this on full screen and let you listen to this. This looks lovely. So nice and pretty, as you can see there. There we go. So just leave that as is and come back here. Actually, just on that page, I should show you, sorry. So the same thing again. Whoop. Next video starting. Let's pause that. So as you can see here as well, Ollie's been good enough to put a drop box link, which again I will share, that has all the information there, what he's done, so you can have a look and see how the XF-AVC works in your workflow. So this will be shot on log. You'll be able to grade it yourself, which is really nice. So going on, so this camera, of course, it's a full frame camera. So when we talk about frame rates, the one thing that we've done, which I'm really pleased to see that we've actually done this, on the right hand side, you'll see a picture of the side of the camera where we have the button layout. So we've actually now got dedicated buttons for accessing and interacting with slow and fast motion. So you don't have to go into the menu system as you've had to do before to actually do that, or customize a button to do that. We've actually laid that out. And as you can see here in the 5.9K RAW full frame, we can get up to 60 frames per second. And in the 4K at Super 35, we can get up to 60 frames per second. And to get the higher frame rate, the 120 frames per second, we go into the 2K area. Now, when we talk about speeds here, this is down to where the processor, what it's dictated to get the best from. I know some people out there might say, oh, why doesn't it do 4K 120? With a full frame sensor, if you know how sensors read, they read from corner to corner and read across. Full frame is a lot larger of an area to cut across. So when you're thinking about this camera being able to do 60 frames per second in full frame at a 5.9K readout from corner to corner of the sensor, that is a lot of processing power. It just shows you where we've come with that. So because we're doing that, that's where the 120 has been dictated down to a 2K. But as we know, with the higher frame rates, a lot of people who shoot higher frame rate stuff, especially 120, it's detailed shooting. So you are actually cropping in. You're not doing too many wide shots. You're looking at detail, picking something out. So going into that doesn't really make much of a difference. But the access is phenomenal, so we can get in there quickly and switch it on, and then quickly using the dial here as well is where we actually change our frame rates. So what we have here, excuse the kind of layout of this, it's not the best layout, but it just gives you an idea in cinema raw light what you're actually getting. So if you're shooting from as low as 15 frames per second to 60 frames per second in 50 and 25, and in 24, 12 to 60 frames per second. We have that in XF-AVC as well, as you can see, so 24, 12 to 60, or 50 and 25, 50, going down to the Super 16. So you have a good access if you're just kind of going down there to slow down the frame rates as well. You can go down to 12 frames per second. So, of course, I'm going to elaborate a bit more on the card. A lot of people have seen the new CFEXPRESS cards coming out. It's the fuel of the machine, basically. If you don't have the right card in there, like if you don't have the right fuel in your car, you're not going to get the best performance out of it. So when we're talking about this, the C500 was the first camera to bring this out. The speed of it, to give you an idea, you can see there 2 gigabits per second write speed when you're going across, the transfer speed going across. When we look at other cards in the market, like XQD cards or the CFast cards and compact flash cards, you can see the difference. They're twice as fast as XQT cards and nearly 3 times, if not close to 4 times as fast as CFast cards. So this card is really opening up what you can do internal recording on cameras going forward. So the C500 from us was the first camera to do it, and as you've seen, we brought out the 1DX Mark III, which is our hybrid camera, a lot of people are calling it now, but our top-end professional sports and wildlife camera. This also uses this card, and that's what allows that camera to do 5.5K internal raw recording as well as the high frame rates it can do. So really, really good. And then, of course, with your SD UHS-II cards, recommendation there is using the SD UHS-II cards. So they're really fast as well. Really recommend them for recording. They're your lower cost cards as well, so great for your proxies. And they're 3 times the speed of the UHS-I cards. So this is just talking about double slot and simultaneous recording. So as you can see here, we can do double slot recording. Whoops, somebody's calling in my house. I hope my wife gets that. Double slot recording in RAW, and we can do double slot recording as well in XF-AVC, a 4K UHD, and as you can see, simultaneous recording. We can do cinema raw light and get our 2K proxy at the same time. So a lot of flexibility in there, depending how you want to shoot with the camera, which is really, really good. And again, when we think about the cards allowing us to do that, as well as the processing power of the actual camera being able to write everything so quickly to the cards. So talking about the much loved and ever more popular growing dual pixel CMOS AF with touch focus. So we've had this feature, the touch focus came out with the C200. The dual pixel CMOS AF came out with a stills camera, first of all, if I remember rightly, and it was also in our C300 Mark II. This is a game changer for single camera operators. It's such a useful tool for a single camera operator to go around and not have to worry about trying to just focusing while they're trying to do other things. Usually with documentary filmmakers or independent filmmakers, you only have a small crew or you have one person. And if you're trying to get a focus puller, which is still a very important job and is still required in higher end productions, in smaller cameras, it's just something that we can take the pressure off You can be assured that the camera will work with face detection or work with touch focusing for you without hunting, and just lock onto the subject and track and hold that subject for you. So of course you can see it, continuous AF face detection, works with all our EF lenses that we have out there, as even our full range of EF lenses, all the way from our consumer lenses all the way through our professional lenses as well. And of course you have a faster focus in the touch panel, so being able to touch focus where you want it to go. Now, not only is the technology great, but we call this a professional AF system now, and the industry, the people who are using it, are calling it a professional AF system. And that's down to not just that it's a great autofocus system, but we can actually tweak it how we want it to work or how we need it to work in the scenario. So on this slide here, I love demonstrating this when we do have face-to-face training sessions or face-to-face sessions with end users. And when I show them how they can do this, it knocks the socks off them. It really impresses, and it really shows what they can actually do. So the C500 Mark II is equipped with AF tuning and AF speed adjustment. So if you look on the left-hand side, the AF speed, this means I can actually change how quick the focusing will go from subject to subject. So if I'm touch focusing from foreground to background, I can make it go really quick. So if I went to +2, like an ENG shoot, it will just shift really, really quick to the next subject. But if I slow it down and bring it down to -3, -4, and even slower, it goes down all the way to -5, you can actually get cinematic pull. That means that a single camera operator with the right lens will be able to touch focus, and the camera with the lens will slowly shift the focus like a cinematic pull, which is wonderful. The responsiveness is also a very useful tool, especially if you're doing a walking interview or walking presentation when you have somebody in the shot. We've all seen those scenes where you have a presenter or somebody's across the road looking at camera, and sometimes either a subject like a bus, or they pass by something, or people pass it in front of them. If you're using AF, what would usually happen is the AF would lock on to something that came in front. But what we can do with the responsiveness here is we can speed it up that we want it to change quickly, or what most people use it for is slow it down. So that means when something does come in front of the subject we're focusing on, or our subject that we are focusing on passes in front of something, it won't start to shift the AF. It will hold the plane of focus, which is really good. So I can adjust that with the speed for how I want the AF to work, and the responsiveness and how I want it to work with my subject in front of it. Now, what Canon have actually done, if we look at our previous cinema EOS cameras, so all the way from our C300 Mark II, C200, even the C100 Mark II, which is a fixed center focus, but it still has this as well. The speed of the change of focus doesn't matter if it's one of the fastest speeds or one of the slower speeds. It's a single speed, so it will just start off, go straight through. It's always an equal speed. What we've done with the C500 Mark II, again, from feedback from the industry, trying to make this better, we've actually put in an algorithm that allows this to look like it's got a human touch. So it will accelerate at the start, have a constant speed through the center part of the focus, and then gently slow down as it comes to an end. So that's more like what a focus puller, or if you were focusing yourself, would work. But the camera is doing it for you. Again, I want you to think of these as tools to assist you to get the job done, especially in the scenarios you might be in. You might have to use it for every scenario. You don't have to use it for every scenario, but there are certain things that come up, especially interview style, or if you're doing some tight close-up work where this is a time saver and will just assist you in getting the job done in less takes. We've actually had some feedback from the industry that they've said with the AF's functionality that we have in this camera, we can reduce takes by 25%, which is huge. That saves time, it saves money. So when you're talking about having this for certain scenarios where it's a financial and time benefit, is a really, really key thing for a lot of users. This is just talking about the touch AF and the face detection. So in the face detection, you do have face priority and face only. So with face priority, the way it will work is I can lock on a subject. So you can see the first picture there in the top left, it's showing that we're tapping on the open sign. But as soon as a face walks in, it says, I am going to prioritize that face. So we'll go and hunt that face, find the face, track on that face. As soon as the face walks back out, it will go back to the original box where you touched focus and refocus on that subject. Quite a handy tool. Face only is very popular for people who don't want to have that shift in focus. If you switch that on, it'll only look for face. You will not get a box at the start of the screen. You won't see anything. As soon as a face walks in, it'll lock onto it. If the face disappears, it'll hold focus from the last position the face was seen. And then the face comes back into position, or it can see the face again, it'll refocus. So that's face only. Again, that's why people are calling this a professional AF system. It's not just that it will focus wonderfully, it's that we can get it to do it in particular in specific ways to really assist the camera operator in getting the shot quickly, easily, and without having to do it multiple times. This is a function in the camera that is getting more and more popular. When it came out, first of all, a lot of people didn't know what it was. I suppose we didn't show it off the best way or as much as we should have. It's called AF boosted MF, so autofocus boosted manual focus. So what this function does, you're using an autofocus lens, doesn't matter what type. So I'll say, let's have a 24-70 f2.8 lens. It's in autofocus on the camera, but when I select this function, I can manually take control of the camera and it will show me the box is gone yellow. And I can start to manually focus in on a subject, but what it will do is as soon as it sees I'm getting close to a subject or says, I can see where you're going, it will finish the focus off for me. So this gives the creative element of being able to have the speed of the focus that the operator will have because they're controlling the focusing ring, but the assurance that the end focus is locked on. That's important, as you guys know, everybody's listening here. 4K will show you if you're out of focus even a tiny bit. In full HD, didn't really matter. If I was out a tiny bit, you wouldn't notice it. But now we're shooting in 4K. If we miss focus, we might think we've seen it through our viewfinder. We might think we've seen it on the actual monitor. But when we go into post-production and bring it onto our displays, that's when you usually find out, whoops, I didn't get that right. So a function like this, if you're not using the autofocus and the way the autofocus works with the camera, this is a great tool of giving you the creative element of taking control, but the assurance that it will lock onto the subject when it recognizes that's where you're going. So it's a really, really good function inside there. And the final one we have here, which is the most popular, is the focus guide. Now the focus guide is, again, in a lot of the range of the Cinema EOS cameras. What we're getting with this is full manual focus. So if you're using an EF lens or you're using a CNE lens, or you're using any lens that has EF communication attached to it, it has to have EF communication. It's using the dual pixel autofocus, but it's not driving the lens. Of course, some Cine lenses like our CNE range don't have motors inside them. They are fully manual. But what it will do is it'll allow you to move a box on a subject and then tell you which way you are focusing, so you know which way to pull focus. And when it locks onto the subject, or when it says you're focused, you'll get a green box. This really works a lot better than peaking, especially in close-up shots. If you're doing headshots, if you're doing macro shots, anything of detail, peaking is not very good now because, of course, peaking has a range. So I will have depth in my peaking area. Peaking's really good still. It's still a valid tool, especially for wider shots. So I know roughly the plane of focus because it's highlighted in the color, for example, red or yellow, depending on what we're using. But the focus guide will really assist. If I was locked on a face and I wanted the eye to be in focus, peaking wouldn't work too well there because it would show me that part of the nose is in focus, the eye is in focus, and maybe just past the edge of my ear is in focus. That's what peaking would show because it's a frequency. The focus guide is a box and will tell you exactly where that box is, that's in focus. Again, shooting in 4K, focus is essential that you get it right. And these tools, again, it's an assisted tool to get you to get the shot done quicker and not have problems of missing focus. So wonderful tool, and a lot of people really love this. It's one of the most popular ones, especially for the cinema, the guys who do cinema work and TV work. So what we've done with it as well of course, we have a larger sensor in here. So when we talk about dual pixel autofocus in our previous models like the 300 and the 200, you'd get the AF up to around F11. But of course, because we're closing off, the focus guide switches off because it can't see enough. It has to see the subject. If I pointed it at a white wall or I pointed it in like at a black curtain, it'd say I can't see the subject because it's not seeing any definition. But what they've done here with the C500 Mark II, which is wonderful, is they've upped it to now F13. So I can actually see more light and I can get my autofocus to work at a higher aperture, which is really, really good. So outputs. So you can see here, we've already talked about the 4K 60p, but this is the back of the camera with the some of the cables and the outputs that you actually have. So again, won't read through every single one, but the most important ones there, we do have an SDI out terminal, which is your 4K SDI out. You have a HDMI terminal, which also gives you 4K out. You have a monitor terminal, which gives you 2K out, and you've got your XLRs, 1 and 2. So you can see there straight off, we have everything we need on the camera to get going, even timecode terminals and the headphone terminals. So everything's on that camera in that compact size to allow you to work that way. This is the signal information for output. Again, I know it's one of those specky slides when we look at it here, but the key things to look at, I'll just highlight the area I'm looking at. These are your outputs here. So when we're talking about the 12G SDI out, HDMI and monitor output. Now you'll see a little asterisk on here. And currently, when we shoot with the monitor or HDMI out, you can only use one or the other here. And that's just down to the hardware that's inside and the processing power. I think Canon hopefully are looking at this, that they might be able to do something with these two working at the same time. But currently, you use the monitor output or the HDMI output at any one time. You can use 12G SDI output when you're using either of these two. And just for your information, just so you have everything you need to know with this, if I have a HDMI cable and a monitor cable in here, the HDMI will always override the SDI. So it's just so if you know you're putting something in and you're wondering why you're not getting anything out of the monitor output, it's because the HDMI output is overriding it. But you can use these two at the moment. And of course, you have the video output as well, which is the standard Canon one for the monitor or the viewfinder, depending what you're using. But again, you can see here we can get 4K out of these up to 60p. So viewing LUTs. LUTs are very important. A lot of people like using them. So when we're in here, Canon have a dictated LUT button now on the body. So you can see again from feedback what we need quick access to. If we can switch our LUTs on or off, we can go in and dictate where the LUTs to go from. As you can see in our little spreadsheet area here, that I can have it out on the SDI, the monitor, the HDMI, the video terminal, or the V50, should I say. And we can output the different LUTs here. So we have everything preset in here from BT709, BT2020, DCI, ACES proxy, even with PQ and HLG, and depending, again, HDR up to 1600%. And as you can see at the very end, user LUTs. So with user LUTs, you have a menu in here to load up user LUTs via an SD card. And you can load up to 5 user LUTs on the camera, if I remember right. Yes, it is 5 user LUTs. So that means that you don't have to use the presets that are in the camera. You can actually load your own one up and off you go. So we're given the flexibility in there, which is really, really nice. So display feature support. So when you're talking about shooting and displaying the HDR standards, what we're finding here is that through the viewfinders and the monitors, we can actually have PQ and HLG on the monitor devices. So I can actually have HLG or PQ, so see a HDR on here, on the viewfinder here, or going directly out via the SDI or HDMI out, so PQ and HLG. So what it's showing here, it's near HDR standards. You have to remember HDR monitors are, you know, high-end units. You can go up to 2000 nits on some of the newer ones that are out here. But this will bring it on our monitor as close as it possibly can to give the camera operator, if that's what they're shooting in, the best viewing process that they can get while using the monitor, which is really, really nice. And then we have HDR and SDR gain. So this is a tool that, again, is something I like talking about when I'm in front of the camera, and some people ask about it. So of course, we talked about inside the camera, we can shoot in a HDR, so HLG or PQ. But of course, for certain productions, we might say, I need a HDR deliverable, but we also need an SDR deliverable. So a lot of online content these days, people are pushing more for the HDR, but in certain old style broadcasters, they still need the SDR option. So I can connect an external monitor or an external recording device. And what I can do is I can capture the HDR internally and capture the SDR externally. But of course, when we're exposing for HDR and SDR, there's a difference in gain. What this is going to allow us to do is I will set the gain for the HDR internally, but I can go in, as you can see in the monitoring setup, and set the exposure values externally to my external recording device and monitor. So I can get the best from HDR and the best from SDR. Hopefully you kind of understood that a little bit, but you can actually adjust that, which is really, really good. Because as you can see here, if I'm shooting in HDR, either underexposed, that's what it would look like in SDR. So this will allow me to give it 3 decibels increase. And here, if it's overexposed, I can bring it down by -3. So we can actually adjust that. So you can send 2 signals basically, which is really, really nice. Of course, the camera built in has 24-bit digital audio on the body with controls, and then when we put the extension unit 2 on, we actually get 2 more. So when we have the extension unit on, can manage up to 4 XLR inputs. The camera itself does have on board or scratch a 3.5mm and 2 XLR. So even if you're just using the unit by itself, I still have 4 audio channel control on the system, which is really, really good. But when we put the expansion pack unit on, we have up to 4 XLR outputs that we can control, which is really, really nice. False color display. Something, again, a lot of people are starting to use a lot more. So this is a fantastic tool. We all know how we use a waveform monitor for assisting in exposure. But now with false color display, we can put that output straight to an external device via the HDMI or SDI, or we can put it out to our monitor or EVF-V50 if we attach that. So now with false color, and you even get the menu, as you can see the menu on the bottom here telling you what red is, what yellow is, if it's white clipping or just below white, so we can expose correctly. So false color displays are getting more and more used, especially for HDR deliverables, so we're actually exposing as best as we possibly can, more than just using the RI or using waveform monitors, which we should be using at minimum. So this camera comes with that straight out of the box. And then enhanced marker functions. Hope everybody's doing okay here. If I need to stop for a second, just let me know. But we're near the end. I know it goes on a bit, but I want to make sure you guys know as much as possible about what this camera can offer, because it does so much. But the marker functions, we can actually adjust and set the markers on the camera how we want. So in the menu, we can actually do aspect markers, center marker types, and rectangular markers. So we can adjust things around how we want it to look on screen when we're shooting. That's what that's basically showing us. And again, supporting customizable display levels. We can have all the information level 3 or down to level 1 where we have everything off. So all displays off, or just standard information there depending how we're shooting. So again, depending on the camera operator, how they prefer to shoot, if they like looking through the viewfinder with no information, maybe send the information externally, they can do this here. So translucence, OSD brightness adjustment. This is a big thing now when you're talking about adjusting the on-screen display translucence on the camera. Especially in low light shooting, you can actually set it for the opacity, if you see here, where I have all the menu functions around here that might be overtaking and not making my image look the way I want to see it, because it's kind of taken over the image. Instead of stripping them away, you can actually change the opacity of what's around there, so it dims down a little bit. That this image doesn't show it the best way, to be honest, but it is really good that you can just kind of hint that away a little bit where it's not affecting the image. So again, this is showing you the customization of the camera depending how or what you're shooting, depending on how the shooter or the camera operator works with the camera. And of course, anamorphic lens support. So of course, with this camera, an EF or a PL, doesn't matter what lens, the type you're using, you can get a de-squeezed image from the view from your viewfinder or your external devices. So you can see it here, we can do it via EVF, via monitor or HDMI, or in-camera recording will always look like this. You will not de-squeeze on the recording. Some people will ask, oh, can I de-squeeze on recording? No, this is like a LUT. Best way of explaining it's like a LUT. It's de-squeezing to allow you to see the composition as best as possible if you're using anamorphic lenses. So you can expose and compose the image as you want to see more than looking at it, but it will record it as squeezed on the card, and then of course in post-production that's where you would de-squeeze it. So this is just showing it there. And just to expand on that, the user can take advantage of the full sensor resolution by using the 1.3 squeeze, so you can use the 5.9K full sensor, or if you're using Super 35 you can use two times. So you have the option of 1.3 times or 2 times de-squeeze factor for viewing on your viewfinder or on any external device that you've got connected to the camera. So real strong benefit there. ACES support. So again, when we're talking about color sampling, a simple slide here. You'd expect a camera like this to be able to give you all the color spaces. That you can work in. Got an echo there. Everybody okay? Yeah. So you can see that that's got it there from 709 all the way up to Cinema Gamma, all the way up to ACES. So again, depending how you're working, this camera gives you a wide range of color spaces to work in. Now, we've talked about a lot of the tech and spec inside the camera and what it does offer, but it's the versatility of this camera that's exciting a lot of people. It's not kind of designed to be just this type of camera. It's designed for A, B, or C. It's very versatile. So if we look at the kind of images here, it gives us an idea what they're talking about. I think it might go here. So it could be a run and gun docu-style camera, quite simple, very much like if you were using a C300 Mark II or a C200 previously. You can have the EVF on and run and gun and get around to capture imagery. It's small and lightweight enough to get onto a gimbal, so we can do some gimbal work. And when we think about that, we're actually capturing up to 5.9K cinema raw light, up to 12-bit internally. You can see here without any extra recorders or drives or anything else to be attached. That's phenomenal, which is really, really nice. We can get it onto drones. Yes, not consumer lightweight drones, but you can get it onto drones. So again, for higher end production work, TV production, adverts, you saw being used for the Jaguar advert, being able to capture high-end cinema raw light up to 12-bit, but being able to put it on a drone and capture that footage just gives a lot of flexibility with the camera. Of course, adding on the extension unit 2 turns it into a full cinema production camera if need be. So for TV productions, independent filmmaking, even a higher end production filmmaking, you can consider this camera. We can actually build it up and it'll be able to work in that area. And then of course, broadcast. So with the extension unit 2, you get lens control. You can actually put a B4 mount on there as well if you're using broadcast lenses. So the flexibility of this camera, depending how you're using it, is all there. And that's what Canon wanted to look at when they were looking at this camera. It's the wide range of work that's out there. You can make this camera what it needs to be. It's not kind of just dictated down to a single path or just a narrow field of working. So I've already talked about included accessories. Everything you see there comes in the box, the new larger LCD monitor, the new attachments and better screws than we've had on previous models. You get everything in the box, including a 512 card at the moment to get you going. All you need to do is attach your already owned lenses and you're ready to go. That's really good and exciting. Compatible with existing accessories. So of course, if you're talking about Canon accessories or you're talking about third-party accessories, the optical level, you can see the optical access is the same height. They're all in line. Doesn't matter if you're using a C200 or a 500 or going up to 700. You can actually attach similar accessories all the way through this range that's made from third parties from like ARRI or Vocus, Bright Tangerine and so on. They are making specific cages for it, but there are some accessories out there that will cross multiple ranges in the Cinema EOS range. We've already talked about the extension units, so EVF, the extension unit 1 and extension unit 2, so gives that flexibility. And then of course you can see here it's just 4 screws to change the mount. And then of course it does come with shims as well to assist if need be. Going into lenses, take advantage of the lenses, of course. Canon have the widest range of EF lenses on the marketplace, as you expect. We've been doing it a long time in our stills range, and of course adding into our cinema range now. You even got specialist lenses. If you're looking at tilt and shifts or fisheyes, you can attach these because they're all full frame. All Canon EF lenses, not EFS, but our EF lenses are full frame. And when we're going into our cinema range, of course, we are widening and working all the time on our cinema zooms, our cinema prime lenses as well. So at the moment, when you're talking about full frame, we have the C&E lenses, which do have communication, so you can get the focus guide working on that because, of course, they're not an autofocus lens. The Sumire lenses are PL mounts, so they don't have the focus guide, but more classic style. Depending on the look you're looking for, the C&Es are really sharp, really warm. Very, very popular. The Sumires we brought out, they're a cooler tone, more vintage style out there as well. And then, of course, we have everything from our Cine servos, our compact Cine servos, and our Cine zooms in the marketplace. The good thing here as well, I'll quickly jump out of this and back in here. As you may or may not know, CVP are really good. They have a lens coverage and camera comparison tool where you can go in and type in the camera, or select the camera. I've done this already, so a Canon C500MKII, and selected that I'm doing a 4K DCI from 5.9K. I've selected a Canon lens, a Sumire lens, and a 50mm, and it's give you the technical information and give you an overview of what that will look like on that lens. And of course, you can just go in there and select different cameras, the different scales the camera does, a range of lenses from Canon in there, and of course then the range of focal lengths. So if you haven't used this before, I'm sure Jake or somebody will be able to put the link there. It's a useful tool to give you an idea of lens coverage from full frame to Super 35 and so on and so forth. So definitely would check that out if I were you. Nearly there, as I say. So again, supports B format lenses, broadcast lenses, all available to be used there as well. If you're in the broadcast industry and looking for a camera like this, you can get your broadcast lenses working on it. It's very sensible. You can select it if you recognize the type of lenses on it, so it'll give you f-stops or t-stops depending on the lens that you're actually using. And then of course, browser remote. Now, what it doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi itself, you can actually, we will be bringing out a WFT, WFT wireless connection, which will allow for a wireless function where you can control the camera from your tablet or smartphone. And this just gives you an idea what the screen looks like. So you'll have an operating area, your display area, another operating area showing you what your t-stop is, your speed, and you can adjust wirelessly with the camera, which is really nice. It's showing it with a Wi-Fi router there, but we are going to be bringing out a WFT adapter that will mount onto the camera that will allow you to have wireless function. So you can see the flexibility of the camera. It's really, really strong. Of course, IP streaming, if you're doing that and you need it with the Ethernet connections with extension unit 1 or extension unit 2, it will deliver a H.264 8-bit up to 9 megabits per second in full HD. Goes to a receiver, of course, if you're live streaming to a studio or something like that. So you have that functionality with the camera. Works with our remotes, so the Canon RCV100 works with the camera as well. We always like to talk about that. So that gives you full control of the camera over everything, as well as controlling some lens functionality as well with Canon Cine servo lenses. And supports the use of a GPS accessory. So you can see there the GPS receiver GPE2 will be able to be mounted onto it, and if you're using a drone, you've got that as well. So you can see we've thought about lots of different uses for this camera. So last thing, software support. So of course, Canon, as Canon likes to do, it's a very giving company sometimes. It does offer a Cinema Raw development program for free. So this is a piece of software that will allow you to interact and work with Cinema Raw Lite if you aren't using another NLE program. It's free to download from the Canon site, no cost. Don't have to do anything special for it. It's just there to use. We also have Canon XF Utility 3.5. This is great if you're using XF-AVC, as you can see there as well, which will allow you to import and manage your video data, real-time playback, metadata check, LUT applications, anamorphic lens support, all in there. And that is also free to download. You don't have to do anything special to get that either. But of course, if you are using other NLE programs, Avid Media Composer works with the Final Cut Pro. Avid Media Composer, it already says there, but it does also work on Adobe and also works on DaVinci. So I use DaVinci a bit. I do a lot of Cinema Raw Light editing on that. So a lot of the most popular, especially with Adobe, DaVinci, and Final Cut, you're able to work with Cinema Raw Light, which is great. System chart, always boring looking, but it's just a system chart, leave that there. And guess what? That's the end of this presentation. But I'm going to hold your attention for one more second before I open up the phone lines, as they say, and you can start asking some questions, or we'll go some of the questions that we have. If you're not doing anything on April 20th at 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Canon USA will be doing a virtual press conference, which we will be announcing some new professional products and technologies on that day at that time. So in the US, it's going to be at 1 p.m, of course, with time difference. It's going to be 6 p.m. on the 20th. I highly recommend, if you're really interested to see where Canon are going and what we're bringing out into professional marketplace, you should get in there and check it out. Just go onto the Canon USA site. They have all the details there. But it's going to be an exciting evening when that comes out. So highly recommend doing it. But there you go. I'm going to go back to the previous slide and come out. Jake, I'm opening up the phone lines. Has there been any queries, questions, requests?
There has, yeah. So we'll start on Discord. So Swoldoc says, it seems quite presumptuous to say that we want to shoot close-ups 120 frames per second. Is there no chance of this in a firmware update? Also, with proxy recording, can this be activated during XF-AVC? I know it takes a lot more processing power than RAW, which is why we can't do it, but the C300 Mark II could do it when in XF-AVC, and it's a massively useful feature for peace of mind.
Okay, so first question, when you're talking about it, a firmware update probably wouldn't be able to get a higher frame rate out of the full frame sensor. There's a lot of processing power already being driven. It's working like a horse to do what it's doing. This camera has been focused towards the full frame capabilities. It'd be wonderful to be able to go out and offer, with the processor that's in there, which is one of the most advanced processors we have in there, offer everything, you know, saying, oh, 5.9K RAW, 120 frames per second. That would make the camera, first of all, probably twice the cost. You're going up to like C700 price pointing, and the processing power, it would need a second processor in there. So to get this product at the price point it's at in the full frame marketplace, where that's sitting at the moment, where this is, that's where 120. Now, as in, I want to say, hopefully it doesn't sound presumptuous. I suppose the people I talk to, and they talk about the frame rates, the majority of them say to me, oh, my high frame rate work is quite tight anyhow, so Super 16 is fine. So that's where I got that kind of from. If you do need to do wider shots, it's more than feasible to be able to get wider Super 16 lenses, or wider lenses that would be able to give you that. So it's just a technical thing. As I said, it'd be wonderful to do, but next of all, C700 price point, thank you very much. I don't think people would be too impressed by that because of the technology and the way it'll be pushed through. The second question, can you just go back over the second question there, Jake, if you don't mind?
Basically, can proxy...
XF-AVC, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you kind of said it is higher processing power. So at the moment with Cinema Raw Light, with the proxy, you can do the 2K. At the moment, I don't know if this is something that's firmware upgradable. We'll wait and see. The one thing Canon are really good at, that they have done before, is they do go out and ask the industry what things can we potentially do. And of course, there's limitations from hardware and firmware, what you can actually get a camera to push towards. But currently, the XF-AVC and proxy isn't available because, as you've rightly said, with the single processor in here doing it, it's just a little bit too much work, especially going from the full frame. So again, if laws of, I use this pun a lot, and it is a little bit of a joke. I say, as soon as we make can really make the TARDIS and do all these wonderful things, we'll be able to do it in other products. It's getting there, but what we can do right now with this camera is just phenomenal.
Cool. Matt in Discord again. What are the plans to allow us to use both the Canon supplied external LCD monitor and the Canon EVF-V70 at the same time? It seems a bit weird that we can't use both at the same time at the moment, then have to use a third-party monitor.
Yeah, so again, if you look at the size of the body, that has been fed back, just so you know, that has been fed back previously for Canon, which I'm sure that they've got their engineers working on. But with a camera like this, if you look at the form factor and the size and what they put into it, and with the boards and everything else that's in there, again, I think people think, oh, we can just put lots of connections in everywhere. You have to think away how the camera will actually manage everything you're pushing through in it. So the video, or what as we call the video connection in, that allows you to either connect an EVF-V70 or the Canon supplied monitor, is a single cable at the moment. Again, it's just down to power. It's just down to what can the camera take at that time. And at this time, getting the best from the camera to make sure the camera works consistently and the best, they haven't been able to put two video outputs or Canon connected outputs on the camera, but they have supplied the monitor out, the HDMI out, and the 12G SDI. Again, think of the form factor, but it's a good question. And again, these do get fed back, and as soon as processors and boards and the technology at the price point people expect comes out, you'll hopefully get there.
Yeah, it's one thing I think, it'd be really worth you guys adding. If a Mark III ever does come out, that'd be one thing.
Well, give this one a chance. It's not even 6 months old.
So another question, I'll go to YouTube on this one, and we'll go back to Discord. So where is it? Just a question later on: is the raw recording always C-Log2? Even when I record in C-Log3, it seems that C-Log2 gives the only good results.
So if you're recording in RAW, CinemaRAW, and you do use log 3, it's a funny kind of thing, because it's a RAW codec, and in I know it works in DaVinci and in Adobe because I've accessed it myself, because the C200 does the same. You can access log 2. That's just the if you want to say the quirkiness of CinemaRAW Lite. It's a RAW codec, so it's got more information. I don't know which way to kind of answer that, because that's basically where that kind of works, that that codec. You can shoot in log 3 and you can access log 3. That's the benefit of it. A lot of people like shooting in log 3 and working with that. If you're going to log 2, it gives you the wider areas into the dark areas, and depending how you're working with that, you can access them. I suppose that's the only way I can answer that at the moment. It's raw. It's too flexible.
So seeing the 6 on YouTube says, is there a firmware plan to allow forced 1080p output on the SDI output? Right now, it follows your shooting resolution, essentially rendering that port useless if you're shooting 4K.
Is that the monitor out we're talking about, not the 12G SDI out? Sorry.
Just wait again for Cine the 6 to reply which one he means. But yeah, it doesn't say. The 4K out will give you 4K out. The monitor out is set at 2K at the moment, and that again is just down. Again, it's all coming back to a similar answer. It sounds terrible, but it's down to the hardware that's inside the camera, the size of the camera, and how the camera is designed to work. It might be something, if you're talking about 2K, to push the 4K afterwards. That again, the engineers, if it's something that can be done, and if there's a big push in the marketplace, they could look at it. They could potentially do it, but I don't know. But that's why we put the 4K on there anyhow, so it does give some 4K option out. Yeah. This is an interesting one, because this is one of my gripes of the camera. So Ivo says, hello to all. As a documentary cinematographer, I don't understand how Canon expects me to use the audio dials when I'm shooting. They're on the wrong side and should be swapped with the media slots.
Yeah, that, I suppose, again, the modular design of that camera, when they were laying everything out, it's like going inside. I wish, some people might say, I wish my heart was on the the other side, because it'd be more convenient. It's down to the way things were designed and built when they were designing it. Again, it's good feedback to have, because in the future, like what we've done with the buttons, the slow and fast motion buttons and the LUT buttons, things that get fed back. And when they are designing these things, they do look at it. There's no such thing as the perfect camera, and there's sometimes workarounds, but I understand what people are saying. I suppose it's just down to what Canon were looking at that time, at the size of the unit that they were working with, and how everything inside worked, and the way they were laying it out. But again, good feedback. We can definitely feed that back.
So back on Discord. Are we supposed to be able to use the SDI and monitor out at the same time at the minute? That doesn't seem to work for me, and I have updated.
That's right. I think I covered that in the presentation. So when you're using the monitor out or the HDMI out, it currently don't work at the same time. The HDMI will always override the SDI. I think it is something Canon are looking at, just waiting for them to kind of come back and say if it's something that can be done with a firmware update. It's something that I'd like to see. So if you're talking about that, I'd like to see it as well. I'm sure they're working at it. If it can be done, they will do it.
Is the joystick on the hand grip able to be pushed in and used as a function button similar to the C100?
Is the which button? Sorry.
The function button on the grip.
Yes, yeah, you can customize the button. Yeah, you can customize the function button on the number 1 button on the grip can be customized, and if you're talking about the joystick on it, don't think that can be controlled. It does different things. If you change that to something else, it's a bit inconvenient when you want to go through menus or something like that if you're shooting up there with it. But the customizable button on the grip can be customized, yes, as in any numbered button on the camera can be.
I think what they're also saying is the actual joystick, can that be pushed in as a button?
Currently, no. I think it's because of what I've said is if you did that, it kind of stops the camera doing other things.
Yeah, because it's just a confirm button, isn't it? Like an OK one to navigate
it is
menus.
An OK button, yeah. At this time, not interesting. It's something that could be fed back to see if Canon look at it. I can't see the practicality of it, because if you're using that joystick for going around the menu, and next of all you press enter into something, and it doesn't do that, it does something else, it could be quite annoying.
So Jerome asks, if you use a user LUT, is it added within the metadata? I don't think it is.
Yes.
Oh, it is?
You can set it up, yes.
Sick. What's the port above the right side vent?
Oh, so that is it's kind of a future-proof port. So that port will be for our WFT wireless connection. That'll be probably the next thing you'll see coming out there. But it's the same one the 1DX Mark III uses. So that will allow the camera in the future to be wireless at very high speeds.
So Cineas6 clarified he means the 12G SDI. Most monitors can only take a 1080p input, so 4K out of the 12G SDI doesn't help when you want to be able to send 2 separate outputs, client versus set. Understand.
So the 4G 12G SDI out only puts out 4K at the moment. Again, that has been picked up. I picked it up before. Something that's been fed back. Can we actually go in there and change resolution? Let's see if Canon come back and say that's something we can do. But currently in the camera, it can only do that. But it is something that has been fed back.
Cool. What else we've got? So Swalduck again. We've all heard the rumours about the C300 Mark III, which sounds to be very similar to the C500 Mark II, but without full frame. However, it does not supposedly have a 120 FPS slow motion without crop for the Super 35. Sorry, it does. So, however, it doesn't have a crop at 120p. If this is true, this would alienate and annoy most of us with the C500 Mark IIs. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Good question. It's I don't know anything about cameras that don't exist at the moment, so we'll have to wait and see if, when, why, what Canon do with another camera. But like any system that's out there, the cameras are designed to do a particular thing. A sports car is a sports car, an off-roader is an off-roader. You can't make an off-roader a sports car, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's, again, we can all hope and wish for things, but yeah, until
it's all like I have no idea yet until we see what is going to happen, if anything's going to happen. So that's where we are with there. Wait and see.
Cool. Has anyone else got any other questions? I think that's everything that we've got answered so far. If you want to actually ask myself or Barry anything, you can unmute your mics and just give us a shout.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to put my face up. So at least if you're talking to me and I can answer, I'm going to be looking. I'll try to look down the camera. I keep on looking at the screen. I'll try to look at the camera.
I can see Swaldock's typing again. See what he says. Uh, Anyone else got any more questions?
Don't be shy.
There's a couple of people typing. But yeah, no, I'm intrigued to see what other firmware stuff comes out.
As you know, I always say to people when we talk about firmware, when you see an initial camera, the camera comes out as in, you know, what the industry needed at that time. That Canon could supply, or any brand could supply. And then over time, with feedback from the industry and what's allowed, there's always a little bit of room inside a camera for being able to do firmware updates. But it comes to a point, one of my colleagues who works for Canon Europe, some of you might know him, his name is Paul, he turns around and says, if you want something in it, yeah, we'll put it in it, but guess what, I have to take that away, because there's only a certain amount of room inside the camera, but every camera that comes out has some space inside it to allow firmware. And of course, it's down to the hardware that's in the camera that has to allow the firmware.
Yeah.
So you look at most cameras from even 3 years ago or even 5 years ago, from when they came out to where they are now, they are sometimes completely different cameras, you know, for what they can actually do.
Yeah.
From fixing glitches to adding extra things in, if they can.
Will there be a cheaper viewfinder?
Well, the EVF V50 is cheap. It's I think it's 500 quid. So that's available at the moment. We do have just the two, the EVF V50, which goes on the back, and the EVF V70, which is classically known for being with the C700 cameras. That is a higher price point. Yeah, they're the two that we currently have.
Someone's just asked in the YouTube chat, RE65 versus C500 Mark II image quality, who wins?
Well, that's down to whoever shoots with whatever camera. There's so many videos on YouTube at the moment of, you know, camera versus camera versus camera versus camera, and even with that, I always put the caveat, it's down to the shooter at that time what they prefer. When I see people doing the verses and they say, I prefer this, and the other person says, no, I prefer that, it's very individual. So saying what's better, it's down to the user.
Yeah.
All I can say is the 500 is offering a wonderful image. People are loving it. Like the people who've already got their cameras are coming back to, like, I interact with some of them online, and they're in love with it. But some other people might say, no, I prefer what this other camera system gives us. That's why you have so many brands out there. Depends what your needs and requirements and expectations are.
Yeah. Well, I think like the biggest thing I've heard people praising the C500 Mark II for is, like you say, the modularity of it.
Yep.
Like the form factor for what it can do is fantastic. And when you combine that with the autofocus and all the other kind of Canon creature comforts that everyone's used to with other cameras, this is kind of the camera the C700 should have been. And it's what everyone's wanted out of Canon for such a long time now. And yes, it does have shortcomings, but every single camera does.
That's the thing.
Just part of camera design.
That's part of camera design. As I said at the start, I know I'm from Canon and I use Canon, but you think about what we've done in the last 9 years of being in this, and where we have come from and where we are right now in that short space of time within this part of the industry. Yes, we've been making digital still cameras and even some video cameras and broadcast lenses for decades and decades. But when we brought out Cinema EOS in this area, where we are now is just phenomenal. I kind of go, wow, look at what we're offering at this price point in 9 years in this part of it. Yes, it's not for everybody, but what is? That's why, as I said, you've got all these brands with all their cameras. Everybody's got their preference, and Canon have a good offering out there. Doesn't do everything that everybody wants, but no camera does.
No, exactly.
Hi there. Am I able to ask a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Hi there. Yeah, so I asked a question earlier about the kind of joystick on the side of the camera. The reason I said that is because I've had C100 Mark I, and then I had a C300, and then I had, C300, C100 Mark II, and then I had the C300 Mark II. And basically, the problem I have is if I'm running and gunning, on all the C100s, you're able to kind of use that joystick. You press it in, it acts as a function button. You can put up the ISO or, turn down the white balance or something, and then kind of keep going.
I know what you mean. I know.
Not
Yeah,
even
yes.
an option to kind of enable on the other cameras. I understand why, because people might press it or something, but it seems like something that's just not there for the run and gun market.
Yeah, so I get what you're talking about there now. So of course, on the camera we have the function button on the monitor, and we have a function button that accesses the exposure values and all those areas in the, for shooting on the body, or we have individual buttons down the side. So when you're talking about using it that way, again, it's something that I know on the camera that you can't currently do it, but I know what you're talking about, that you can do it on the 100s. It's something that I wish, this is where I wish I had the camera in front of me. It's in quarantine in our office. So let me check something on that back out, and I'll kind of get back onto the guys here, CVP, just to confirm that, because as far as I remember, just going into my head, you can't adjust that push in button, but it might be something that is there and I haven't seen it, or something that can be fed back, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's probably something that needs to be fed back, just purely because I've had it on the C100, didn't have it on the C300 Mark II,
Yeah,
and just kind of really miss it as a kind of run and gun.
Oh, good feedback to have. Like, this is great opportunities for that, so appreciate that. It's good feedback.
Great, thank you. Cheers.
Thanks.
Hi, it's me, Media.
Oh, Media, hi. Thanks for coming in.
Hi. Just to confirm that you can't actually enable it to do to activate the function.
Yeah, I didn't think
like with the C100 or C100 Mark II.
Great stuff. Yeah, nice to have my backup there. Media's there, making sure I don't say anything wrong.
Cool. So, Versedge Win says, I remember Canon used to publish in their white paper about the ISO and its exposure midpoint shifts in relation to its dynamic range, but I failed to find it in C500s. Mark IIs, is it the same with the previous cameras, or is there any changes?
There will be changes because it's full frame. Yeah, there's something that's be interesting to actually get. I think you're right in the white paper, from again my memory going through it and talking about that. I'm sure it's something that we can get the information from. So if it's something that we can get, and make sure that the team at CVP have access to it if it's available.
Cool. And Jerome asks, does the waveform only show the log image?
Yes. So an interesting thing when you're talking about waveform monitors, if you're recording in log, you want to expose on the camera correctly. So the waveform monitor in the camera is actually exposing at the log. So if you put a LUT on there, it's not going to change. I've had a couple of people talking about it. It's been quite interesting. The way to expose on a LUT, if you're putting it outside, so if you're recording log and you have your LUT on your monitor, on an external monitor, get your LUT on there and expose for your client, or if you're looking at it, the waveform monitor on the external device, like an Atomos or Small HD or other brands that have it there. But when you're exposing inside the camera, if you expose with a LUT on it, you're not exposing correctly for log when what you're actually recording, and that could cause a problem or be irritating when you go to post.
Why not?
Sorry?
He says, why not?
Why not? Because if you're exposing the log because you're recording log, that's what you're capturing. And at the moment, to do that internally, like I spoke to a couple of DOPs who were kind of querying it, and when I actually had Brett Danson answer the question, Brett Danson actually demonstrated this when we were at the one and only show we've had this year, BSC, showing why you shouldn't be exposing to a LUT when you're recording log. And that was down to that when you go to post, you're not in the right place.
So yeah, he just thinks it'd be handy for run and gun situations.
I'm sure, yeah, of course, it'd be very handy, but just exposing at the wrong area at the moment with the Canon system, the way it works, if you expose to a LUT, your exposure is going to be out to log, because we say at 800 ISO and so on. Like, well, we talk about that's the perfect in log 2 800 ISO or log 3 800 ISO. Of course, you can work anywhere in ISO in log depending how you're shooting, but the best latitude to get 15 stops, as soon as you start going up and down, you start losing some dynamic range.
Cool. I think that's everything at the moment. Does anyone else have any questions they want to jump in the chat or hop in for a voice convo? Just yeah, I'll mute your mic and hop in. If not, I guess we'll call it there.
No problem. Just confirm it before I say bye-bye.
Cool.
Like anything, if there are any questions, Jake, that come on, I'm more than happy to answer any of the questions at a later date, a later time as they come through, if they come through in any area from YouTube or from Discord or anything like that. But I'll just say for myself, appreciate you guys listening to me for well over an hour, going through slides, not the way I usually like to do it. Looking forward to being able to get face-to-face with people soon, and being able to answer questions and actually show you stuff on cameras and the C500 especially. And just to make sure you guys keep yourselves, your families all safe over this time, and looking forward where it all passes and we can get back to some form of normality.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, everybody. If you have any other questions, just let us know in the Discord or on the YouTube afterwards, and either myself or Barry will be able to answer them for you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Perfect.
everybody.
Barry, thanks. That was awesome, mate. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, guys.